Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. In today's lecture, we're going to be talking about cognitive development. So just a little bit on what cognitive development is. We're going to be focusing on thinking skills, problem solving skills, and really discussing academic kinds of information. And so the article on this slide is a great one to look at to better help you understand cognitive development. Okay, so to get us started, we're going to be talking about Piagetian theory on this slide as well as the next slide. So Jean Piaget was a stage theorist, and he proposed for children a cognitive developmental theory. And on this slide, we're going to be talking about the functionalism aspect, and then on the next slide, we're going to be talking about the structuralism aspect of his theory. And so with functionalism, he looked at how children categorize and organize information. So basically, he looked at how do children make sense of information within their brains, and how do they put all of that information that they're categorizing and organizing into schemas. And so a way that you can think about a schema is kind of like a box or a file folder within your head, and that's where all of the information that you learn about the world around you gets stored. And so there's a bit of a difference between the way that we store information within those schemas, and two of those ways are through assimilation and accommodation, and you can see that here on the image. So assimilation is how children add information into an existing schema. So on the left hand side you can see here that a child who already has an understanding for what a four-legged animal is would categorize a dog within this schema. And then for accommodation, this is where children are creating a new schema with new information. So as you can see on the right-hand side, a dog is categorized in a four-legged animal area, but also as a cat. And when a child is able to now separate information about a cat and a dog, they can create two schemas, one for cats and one for dogs. And so this is just a way to look at our way of adapting to our environments through the way that we organize and categorize information into different schemas. And so for young children, they're learning new things every day, and it's important for them to be able to categorize and organize all of this information that's coming into these schemas, and interactions through their environment and the experiences that we have with people and places are really crucial for being able to understand what types of information we are taking in and how it's going to be stored. So this video here by the Khan Academy is great for more information about the functional or schema building part of Piaget's theory. So go ahead and check that out for more information. So as I was mentioning on the previous slide, Piaget is a stage theorist of cognitive development, and with structuralism, he is looking at how those schemas that we talked about on the previous slide, so those file folders or boxes within our head for all that information, how those schemas or ways in which we organize information across time change. And so Piaget looked at different types of stages, and specifically for this course we're going to be focusing on the pre-operational stage, and as you can see here, that is focusing on our preschoolers. And so during this time, we can see that when we're at a certain age throughout Piaget's stage theory, that there are schemas that we have about the world that are organized in a particular way. And we're going to look at some of those for our preschoolers, and we've been kind of already talking about some other areas, but we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next few slides. And so basically we're thinking about the way that information dictates how we behave and how we interact, and children's behaviors are indicative of how they are thinking and how they have schematically organized information in their heads. And so the way that we organize information within our schemas, it changes across time. Therefore, children's behaviors and their interactions with others also change across time. And another idea that Piaget discusses within each stage is that we're not just adding information onto the way that you thought about it earlier. We're moving to a new stage and completely reorganizing or restructuring the information that we have. And so we're thinking about things in completely different ways than we previously did in the former stage. So how I was thinking about things during the sensorimotory period is going to now be different in the pre-operational period, and then following in the concrete operational and formal operational. And so you behave in completely different ways than you did before based on the previous stage. And we'll talk a little bit about different examples of what that looks like on the next few slides. Alrighty, so on this slide, we're going to be talking about the substage of symbolic function from around 2 to 4 years old. And so during this time, children are able to represent objects that are not present. So this is when we think about pretend or dramatic play, so pretending to be other people or using objects in pretend ways. And so this doesn't come onto our abilities until around the preschool years, and so this is why dramatic and socio-dramatic play are heavily present during this time, because children are now able to have object representation. And we also see that around this time children are much more egocentric, so feel free to check both of these videos out here to learn a little bit more about symbolic function as well as egocentrism and perspective taking. And then we also see that children start to exhibit rigid and illogical thinking, so more black and white thinking. They definitely have a harder time seeing the bigger picture, and as we might mention, reading between the lines is a bit more difficult for children, and this especially comes into consideration with that perspective taking, so they have a harder time seeing different points of view and being able to understand a variety of different perspectives. And so sometimes their thinking is a bit skewed and they have a hard time with reasoning, understanding, problem solving is still being developed during this time. And also children start to exhibit animism, so believing objects are alive, that are inanimate, and that they actually have a purpose. So I gave a couple examples of paper blowing in the wind and believing it's alive because it moves, or a stuffed animal or baby doll that might get dropped is sad and hurting. And you can also see how this exhibit of animism is prevalent and connected heavily to dramatic play. So when children are engaging in dramatic play, they're often acting upon objects as active agents, so they are bringing objects to life. And so you can see the connection between this animism of inanimate objects and believing that they're alive and having a purpose, while also engaging heavily in dramatic play where we're pretending to be another person and also using objects in pretend ways. And so this is also another great resource for you to look at symbolic function and seeing those different stages that we are looking at specifically related to pre-operational thought. The second substage of pre-operational thought is intuitive thought from around ages 4 to 7 years old. And so during this time, children have several limitations in their thinking or cognitive skills, and it does make it harder for them to perform successfully on conservation tasks. So they tend to get very focused on things and how they look rather than examining all of the different variables within a task. For instance, you may have heard of the short wide glass, tall thin glass example, where water is poured from a short wide glass into a tall thin glass, and children will forget when asked how much water has been transferred and if they are the same or different. Although the water did not change, there was not additional water added, nor was there water taken away. We are just transitioning from the type of glass that was used, but instead children are focused on how the water looks, whether it's higher or taller than the glass that it was originally in. And in addition, it is difficult for them to mentally think back to what the water looked like previously when it was in the short wide glass versus how it looks now in the tall thin glass. And so this inability to hold more than one mental picture in a child's head, it is swayed by the things that they're looking at. So this inhibits preschoolers' abilities to successfully navigate conservation tasks due to this lack of focus and only looking at how things are visually rather than the entire picture. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, these are some of the tasks that children have a difficult time with, and they are numbers, lengths, liquid, mass, and area. And so there's a video here and a graphic on the right to show you what those conservation tasks look like. The video and the image show you only 4 of them, but you can see at least 4 of them right here and what they look like, how they are measured. So take a peek at that to get a little bit more information on examples of Piaget's conservation tasks. Now we're going to be focusing on the cognitive skills from the learning foundations. So first we're going to focus on cause and effect, starting with our 3-year-olds at 36 months. And around this time, children should be able to make simple predictions about things that could happen. So maybe they're predicting how the end of a story will go, or what will happen if they add another block onto their tower. And they should be able to reflect back on something that has already happened. And as an adult or a caregiver, you can help to guide children through conversations of why things might have happened. So if their block tower falls over, you might say, oh, I put too many blocks on top, or I put a round block and it slid off the top and it made everything else fall down. And so children should have some sense of the cause and effect relationship that is happening. And then by about age 4, children should be able to discuss the past, present, and future. And they should be able to talk about the last time that they went to do something. So if they went to the beach and they dug in the sand with their shovel and they found a small little turtle in the sand, and then they were at the beach again. They are hoping that they'll find another turtle if they dig in the sand, and that the waves won't hit, maybe because last time the waves started to hit when they were digging in the sand, and so they're hopeful that that won't happen again. And then maybe they're able to think about, ooh, next time I go to the beach, I am going to bring a little bucket so that if I'm digging in the sand, I'm able to put the little turtle that I find in the sand in my bucket. So again, thinking about the past, the present, and the future, all centered around an experience that they've had, an experience that is currently happening, and then an experience that is likely or could happen in the future. And then at age 5, children should be able to think about things that have happened across a period of time and understand why things happen. So better understanding relationships, emotions, behaviors, actions, and how all these things are connected and why they happen in the world. So all of those connections and how they have meaning, and being able to understand and relate to the cause and effect of time. So we're not really expecting children to have official abilities to keep time until around 5 years old. So at around 5 years old, or starting kindergarten, this is when we're working with children on telling time. So what the hour looks like, and non-clock time, so just understanding how long something might take. So for children, 5 minutes can seem like a really long time, and looking at the clock, they're just learning how to tell time to the hour, so they're very tied to what happens at particular times of the day. So having consistent routines and schedules, which should already be implemented at birth, is really important for children. So understanding that when it is dark out, it is time to get ready for bed, and when the sun comes up, it's time to wake up. And so there's different indications of time based on experiences, based on behaviors, actions, emotions, and relationships. And so those are great ways for children to connect what's happening in the world to the aspect of time. On this slide, we're going to be talking about cognitive skills for problem solving. So again, starting with our 3-year-olds, young children's problem solving abilities, we see at this time use less trial and error. And trial and error is when you're trying to strategize and you can visually see that something is not working. And so you try another strategy, and we're thinking through a variety of different strategies in our head and mentally reflecting on what will work and what doesn't work, and trying out those ones until we find something that works. So again, trial and error is trying out things until you are able to resolve your problem with a successful strategy. And so we're starting to move away from this around 3 years old because children are better able to start thinking about possible solutions that they have, and they're better able to remember strategies that they've used in the past to problem solve. And so they'll automatically go to that idea of how to solve a problem and maybe even try it out. And so they are likely to ask adults for help, but they may get frustrated and walk away, and they may need you as the adult to come over and support them and help them to navigate and remember what strategies they have used to solve a problem. Visuals can be a great way for children to recognize and remember strategies that are helpful to them when solving problems, giving them simple tasks to try out and increasing based on their needs is a great way to challenge children and to give them opportunities to problem solve. So through play, children are going to naturally need problem solving skills when they're interacting with others. Many ways that we can help children to problem solve without it being forced upon them. And then around 4 years old, children are now better able to apply simple strategies. So again, being able to add onto their memory skills and being able to solve problems from their past experiences. And so if they know how to stick something together using glue, they're going to know that in the future they can start to use glue or staplers or stickers to hold things together. And they've already built up a repertoire of simple strategies that they can solve problems with, and can go and gather those materials on their own and have an understanding of how that problem solving is going to work out step by step. But also, 4-year-olds are likely to get frustrated, and they definitely need some additional support and encouragement because maybe they're trying to glue something onto a piece of paper and they know that this is a way to problem solve, but they are struggling. It's not working out the way that they envisioned. So maybe the glue has dried out, or they can't find the stickers that they used previously, and so they feel defeated. So as the adult, you can help children by having conversations with them about problem solving skills that they already have, or giving them additional tools so that they are not using learned helplessness. And so we're providing ways for support and increasing their independence. So another example might be if a child's working on a puzzle and they can't get the piece to fit, giving simple suggestions on, I see that you have a blue piece that you're looking for. Where are all the blue pieces? And giving them opportunities to have steps in their problem solving, and giving them tiny bits of information that can add on to what they already know and give them the tools that they need to problem solve. And then by 5 years old, children should be able to identify and apply a variety of different strategies. So again, building their repertoire and increasing it, and they have more ideas that they can bring forward in their abilities to solve problems for a variety of different tasks. And so you can see for our previous example, if a child is using glue and it's not working out because maybe it got dried out or maybe it ran out, they can brainstorm about another way that they could stick things together. So maybe they know that they can go and wet the glue, or they can go and get stickers or a stapler or other strategies like a paper clip to hold things together, because they know that maybe they don't have to just stick it together. They could hold it together using something else. And so they're much more persistent than at 4 years old. And this video here is a great example of 5-year-olds and being able to apply a variety of different strategies and exhibit persistence during this time with problem solving. Next, we have our cognitive skills for attention. So 3-year-olds, they do tend to get a little bit distracted, and this can cause difficult times with those conservation tasks, as we were previously discussing, because they're just so busy and get easily distracted by the way that something might look, that they often have a hard time remembering what something actually is. So as we discussed, the amount of water in the glass didn't change, even though it looked like it changed, but children are distracted by visual aspects and weren't able to piece together that the two glasses are the same, and also they are still at the very beginning stage of pre-operational thought and understanding of cognition during that time. And so they pay attention to, they have a hard time paying attention to more than one thing at a time. So, for example, if an adult is talking, but there is a lot of noise going on in the background, or maybe something is happening next to a child. So maybe an adult is talking to a 3-year-old, and then a peer next to them is having a conversation, and then there's an airplane outside the window. They might have a difficult time focusing on the conversation with the adult due to all the additional stimuli that could be overwhelming and put into their focus at one time. And children also tend to imitate adults' actions. So your actions as an adult are very powerful. And so children will likely engage in similar or identical behaviors to what you are doing and what you are saying. So as an adult, be mindful of your actions and your words, because children will imitate you. And around 4 years old, we see that children still have a fairly short attention span, and so they are also easily distracted, but there is improvement from ages 3 to 4. They have several new ways that they are able to learn. They observe others, they imitate adults, and they also learn by listening to adult instruction. And preschoolers at age 4 are also able to take in information and learn from beginning to end. And now at age 5, we see that there are significant increases in attention span, and we see that children are much more able to focus, and they don't get distracted as easily by multiple stimuli going on in their environment. They can pay attention to multiple types of information coming in at the same time. So even though there is a teacher talking to them, a child having a conversation on the side, and an airplane outside the window, they can recognize and pay attention to different aspects and are able to tune into one element of their environment, that stimuli, more, and able to better focus even though there's other things going on. And so they're very interested in what is going on around them, so they can ignore those distractions that aren't as meaningful to them. Okay, so on this slide, we're going to be talking about memory cognitive skills. So starting with our 3-year-olds again, we're thinking about how during this time, 3-year-olds should be able to have abilities to anticipate things that have happened to them on familiar and regular basis and with familiar people. And so they think about things in their day-to-day routines, so what they do at school and what they do at home, and being able to think about steps in what is coming next. So if you read a story right before nap time, children can anticipate that, okay, after story time, that's when we're going to get ready to take a nap. And they should also be familiar with recent past events that have happened, and understanding that, okay, maybe yesterday I went and got ice cream with mom, and then this morning I was reading a story with dad, and also remembering characteristics of their environment or people in it. So this is really crucial for our consistency and continuity of care. So if you're spending a lot of time and children are being exposed to you frequently, so seeing you on a regular basis, they'll remember your name, characteristics about you, so that you have blonde hair, or that you wear glasses, or that you like chocolate chip ice cream, so different things that they might remember about you. And then as you can see here, 48 to 60 months are 4 and 5-year-olds. This is going to be combined in their skills for memory, so being able to retell stories from a picture book with reasonable accuracy. So they could describe to you what happens in the book, who are the characters in the book, what the storyline is. And also children should be able to have an episodic memory, so they're able to understand personal experiences of specific objects, people, and events that have happened at a particular time and place. And so there's a video here to help you to better understand and give you a script for familiar daily events. So first I go to school, and then when I get to school, this is what I do. And so this is giving you basic understanding of being able to remember and understanding also the events that are happening at a particular time. And then also children can script familiar events and can remember autobiographical events. So autobiographical events are a combination of episodic and semantic memory. And so we're looking at different types of facts about the world and our memories. So for example, during last summer, um, during a time when my family went to Disneyland. It was a little bit weird because everybody had masks on, and it was around the time that pandemic was happening. And so when we went to Disneyland, here's kind of the larger context and the general knowledge about Disneyland and what it was like at a particular time. So I'm able to talk about the experience at a particular time, specific people, objects, and have that within my episodic memory, but then my semantic is general knowledge and facts about the world. So I have general knowledge and facts about Disneyland, and I have specific events related to when it was the pandemic time and how COVID has affected people wearing masks at Disneyland. So again, just being able to have concrete knowledge about events and understanding and retelling experiences that children have had from their memory. So a lot more detailed, as you can see, from 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And so it looks to be a bigger difference in being able to retell, understand, and involve themselves in past events that they have experienced. Alrighty, so now for cognitive skills related to number sense. At 3 years old, children have some understanding of what number representation looks like. So I have 2 or I have 3. They're able to tell how old they are and use their fingers as accurate representations for numbers. So understanding the importance of demonstrating the words and the quantities that they're indicating. So big and small, and tall and short, and being able to understand that words help them to address different types of quantity. And the idea of the number piece and what number representation and number sense actually is will start to come later. But having different types of words to describe what representation in numbers looks like is a great tool for them. So giving them lots of descriptive words is very helpful. And then at around 4 years old, children should be able to understand that the last number that they name in their counting of a set of objects is the answer to a question of how many do you have, or how many is this? If we're looking at something or they're holding something, or I'm asking them to count. And so only if there is a pile of 5 objects, a child is able to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and know that the last number that they said is 5, and that is represented in that how many piece. And so we can see that children have indications of how many in a group, and understanding of the last word spoken is indicative of that number of the total set. And so they should be able to use one-to-one correspondence for those 5 objects. So I'm pointing at one block, 1, pointing at the second block, 2. So being able to see that each object that is touched or pointed at represents a singular number and unit. And so we can see that each object can be counted once, and that it's indicative of that one-to-one correspondence. And so there's a video that talks about what that looks like here. And then around 5 years old, I'm just going to jump to the last bullet to look at children being able to count up to 10 objects using one-to-one correspondence. So doubling that number that they're able to count with, and seeing that they can understand the name of the last object counted and how it represents the total number of the group. So this is a little bit different than what we were talking about for our 4-year-olds. when they're asked the question of how many, this is understanding that the last number that I say is how many are in the group and not just the answer to the question, but actually how many objects there are, and that the last number is in the set card called cardinality. So we can see that difference from 4 to 5 years old during this time. On this slide, we're going to talk about cognitive skills for classification. So we see that around 3 years old, children can group objects. And so classification is really our ability to see different attributes of objects and put them together according to their attributes. And so children can group objects and they can do one attribute at a time. So if child is looking at blocks and they decide to sort them out by color, it's going to be very hard for them to put all of those blocks back into the pile and then sort them by shape, because they're having to focus on more than one task at a time. So remember those conservation tasks. This difficulty in being able to shift their focus is not present yet, and so giving children more simple tasks in classification during this age is going to be much more efficient and effective for them. And so we also see that they're not able to make that mental shift in being able to identify and have sophistication in all different types of labeling. And so we see that around 4, children are much better able to sort and put things back. They can do multiple tasks at once, so shape, size, color, and they could also put all the transportation items together, or put transportation items together and identify different images that could go along with it. And so we can see that they can match pictures to familiar objects. So maybe I have different transportation objects that are physically at hand, and then I have pictures that they could match them to, or stickers that they could match them to based on the colors. So there's much more familiarity in matching and understanding this. And then by 5 years old, we're seeing that children can sort objects by various characteristics, and they're much more able to have input in understanding shapes specifically, and how they have all 3 sides, and that for triangles with those all 3 sides, they're able to put them together and increasing distribution. So really different based on the age group and understanding sorting of objects, and specifically classification of shapes and colors. And so if you need more information on this, make sure you check out the Learning Foundations. Again, I'm breezing through all of these cognitive skills pretty quickly, and so some concepts may need to be reviewed in a bit more detail, so just keep that in mind when you're going through the slides today. Alrighty, so last but not least, let's think of symbolic abilities for cognitive skills. So this is, again, thinking about that pretend play. And so around 3 years old, children should be able to engage in make-believe play with several sequential steps that they are doing. So I'm putting the baby into the car seat, and then I'm going to drive to the store, then I'm going to shop for groceries. So a story thread that's going on, assigning roles, who's the grandma, who's the mom, who's the baby, all of that. So a little bit of planning that's happening during this time by real concrete objects that are present for children. So I have my imaginary items that are coming into play, and so I can have the tangible objects. So maybe I have some plastic keys that are going to represent actual keys, but I might pretend without something actually being there. So maybe we're having a tea party and I'm pouring you tea out of a pretend teacup, but there's not actually any liquid in there. So I'm able to have imaginary objects present with also concrete objects. And so there's a mixture of that. And then at around age 4, children are starting to add more props and costumes, and really good at their imagination during this time of objects, and are better able to create more advanced play scenarios, especially because they have more advanced language and are creating active agents as part of that bringing to life of their play. And so they're also engaging in more socio-dramatic play as opposed to just dramatic play. So playing with others, using their social skills, and really starting to create that scenario. Same with our 5-year-olds. So 4 and 5-year-olds definitely share some similar characteristics with their symbolic abilities. So again, that fantasy play, imagination, being able to negotiate and discuss the play scenarios. So this is also in combination with their increased problem solving abilities, their abilities to be able to perspective take of others. So you need to have higher forms of perspective taking and problem solving skills in order to discuss and negotiate effective ways to create a play scenario for your dramatic play scene. So those are the final ones for our cognitive skills. And then make sure you do your understanding checks throughout the lecture, and then jump to the last slide for our final discussion on ways to facilitate cognitive development. Alrighty folks, so by now you have made it through majority of our lecture for today. So let's finish off with ways to facilitate cognitive development. And most of this information is primarily pulled from your textbook, so make sure that you're checking that out in conjunction with our lecture material. And we're looking at one of the most important things that we can do for children to facilitate cognitive development is truly just providing them with a magnitude of opportunities for hands-on learning and lots of playtime. Oftentimes we see that we are much too rigid, especially as we're starting to get into kindergarten and early elementary school, and even now the push in preschool with direct lessons and giving children worksheets. It does not create effective challenges for cognitive development, and what children really need is to play and touch with materials and be in tune with hands-on learning and really just to try things out. And so when this is paired with interactions with adults, so not only just giving children materials, but actually engaging in immersed instruction with them where we can be interactive and we can cater to their needs, children can have healthy cognitive development flourishing. And so hands-on experiences that encourage children to increase their cognitive abilities are found on 357 and 358 of your text for social, physical, and logical mathematic experiences. And so when thinking about physical experiences, this is again that touch exploration of real materials and objects. Our social experiences is when we're talking about those real materials and objects. So again, this interaction with the adult is going to be a key piece here, providing those materials, talking about those materials, and then those logical, mathematical experiences, exploring relationships between objects. So how do these objects go together? How do we use them in conjunction with one another? How do we learn things through building and the function of the world? So all great opportunities for adult and child interaction and play, cooperation. And your book also talks about making sure to include a variety of activities of different kinds. So thinking about matching, so putting objects that are together alike and grouping, taking objects that are alike and putting them into groups, and thinking about the relationships between them, and then also temporal ordering, so putting things in order according to time and conservation, which we talked about. So again, more information on these different types of activities and opportunities on 364 and 366 to 373. And then last but not least, thinking about utilizing divergent thinking and open-ended opportunities for discussion. So we're really trying to think about how we facilitate the use of questions and giving children opportunities to have open-ended discussion through our questions. So your book gives a little more detail on 373 and 370 through 375. about divergent versus convergent questions and thinking. And so really what we're seeing with divergent is being more open-ended and allowing for more than just a yes or no answer. What do you think about this? How do you think that we could create something new? What are your ideas? I wonder what would happen if letting children fill in the blanks, giving them opportunities for more discussion to come forth rather than with our convergent questions and thinking we're only really getting one particular answer. What is the answer to this? How many do you have? Now, sometimes it's great to have convergent questions to help to better understand children's knowledge and things like that, but it's important to have open-endedness. And so just leaving that on that note, I want you to think about what's something that you enjoyed from today's lecture. So a little bit of an open-ended question, and I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you in the next lecture. Bye, everyone.